Today, we'll talk about a prophecy concerning the year 2025. This prophecy comes from a Japanese manga artist named Ryu Long Su, a female author now 70 years old. She's the woman featured on the cover of the manga itself. Inside the comic, there's also a blurry photo of her from her 20s. Ryu began documenting her dreams in 1976, when she was just 22 years old. Over time, she realized that many of her dreams came true, what are known as precognitive dreams. In 1999, she compiled years of these dreams into a single manga titled The Future I Saw. This was not a serialized comic, just one volume containing 15 dreams. Out of the 15, 10 have already come true, and 5 have not. After publishing this manga, she retired from public life. She was only 44 at the time. Why did she retire? There were several reasons. 1. She said she felt physically and mentally exhausted. 2. More importantly, she had a precognitive dream around 1995, about 4 years before her retirement, in which she witnessed a massive earthquake. 15 days later, the Great Hanshin earthquake struck Japan. In that dream, she also saw an angel. She asked the angel, "Take me with you." The angel replied, "Not yet. I'll come for you in 5 years." That was in 1995, so she thought she might die in 2000, and decided to step away from work in 1999. On July 15, 1995, the same year, she had another dream, her own funeral. The date in the dream was clearly shown as July 15th, so she believed it would be July 15, 2000. Why didn't she retire earlier? Because she felt that by 1999, her mission was complete, and she was ready to follow the angel. But as it turns out, she didn't die in 2000. Instead, 12 years later, in 2011, she suddenly became famous after the Great East Japan earthquake, March 11th. On the cover of her manga published in 1999, she had written, "A major disaster in March 2011. Such a precise prediction was extraordinarily rare." Her precognitive dreams are different from most prophecies. Most prophets see vague visions, often without specific dates, like Bill Gates allegedly seeing a bullet brushing past Trump, but with no time given. In contrast, her dreams often included timelines, or followed a unique pattern. Even if she didn't see a specific date in the dream, the date she dreamed it often had a connection to the event itself, either occurring in the same year or following a 5 multiple rule. For example, she dreamed of the Hanshin earthquake on January 2nd, and the quake happened on January 17th to 15th days later, a multiple of 5. This kind of pattern makes interpretation trickier. She didn't include a date for the March 11th earthquake, but the dream happened on March 11th, 1996. If she had written that down, people might have considered her godlike. She usually just records what she dreams. The 311 dream came on March 11th, 1996. 15 years later, on March 11th, 2011, the disaster struck. That suggests the intervals in her dreams may not always be in days. They could span months or years, but follow a pattern related to 5. Now there's one unfulfilled dream that stands out. It happened on July 5, 1999. This dream didn't appear in the 1999 version of The Future I Saw, because the manga was published on July 1st, 4 days too early. However, she later published a revised edition in 2021 that included this dream. Even though she had retired, she continued to have dreams. And over 20 years later, she felt compelled to update the manga because similar dreams had returned. In the dream on July 5, 1999, she saw a massive undersea explosion at the center of a triangle formed by Japan, Taiwan, and the Philippines. A huge crack opened on the ocean floor, and magma-like material spewed out, triggering a 100-meter-high tsunami that devastated surrounding countries. 1/3 of Japan disappeared. Taiwan didn't vanish, instead it rose during the quake, emerging as part of a new continent that connected Taiwan, the Philippines, and Hong Kong. She also saw 2 dragon-like shapes flying from the eastern Pacific toward the explosion. She said they weren't dragons but clouds shaped like dragons. She didn't know what they were. There was no specific time in the dream, but she was so frightened by the scene that she woke up. When she looked at the clock, it was 4:18 a.m. She wrote it down. Though she didn't know the exact date, she noticed that everyone in the dream was wearing short sleeves, so she assumed it would be summer. At the time, she was in India, not Japan. She had moved there after seeing a man on television who looked eerily familiar. After researching, she discovered it was Sri Satya Sai Baba, a famous spiritual leader. When she saw a photo of him, she realized their palm lines were identical and even felt he might have been her father in a past life. When they finally met, Sai Baba said only one thing to her: "I know." At that moment, countless images flooded her mind, as if memories from past lives were being unlocked. After that, she returned to Japan. Then, exactly 22 years later, on July 5, 2021, she had the exact same dream again. But this time words appeared in the vision: Great Catastrophe from 2025 onward. Interestingly, the word used this time was catastrophe, Tainan, while the previous one used disaster, Zahai. She interpreted disaster as a natural event like an earthquake, while catastrophe implied something man-made, such as war, explosions, or experiments gone wrong. She now suspects this future event may not be natural. It could be a hydrogen bomb or a scientific experiment gone awry, perhaps even a matter-antimatter annihilation. The time of her dream: July 5, 1999, at 4:18 a.m. Among her other precognitive dreams was one from 1981, in which she dreamt of a gigantic tsunami swallowing her while she was asleep. She awoke to find herself back in her childhood home, bathed in sunset light. The clock read 5 o'clock. She couldn't tell if it was a.m. or p.m. She believed her mother was getting off work, so she headed toward the hospital. The streets were mostly empty, the buildings old. She climbed a pedestrian bridge and found that on the other side were 3 massive ships. Actually, an entire fleet. As she climbed the bridge, more and more people appeared, from Japan and all over the world. She reunited with her mother and sister on the bridge and boarded a ship. Each ship carried people from a different country: Japanese, French, Indian, and more. She believed this might represent the afterlife, the crossing of the river Styx. When you combine this dream with the one from November 24, 1995, about her funeral on July 15, you get a possible conclusion. A massive tsunami could strike on July 5, 2025, around 4:18 a.m., or possibly 5 a.m. or 5 p.m., engulfing Japan and nearby nations. Ryushu would die in that tsunami, and her funeral would be on July 15. Of course, don't panic. On New Year's Day 2011, she also had a dream showing humanity thriving after 2025. It was a sign of hope and recovery. But Ryushu is not the only one who predicted such events. Others have as well. Take Elbeck, for example, an American involved in the so-called Philadelphia experiment and Montauk Project. The Philadelphia experiment was a rumored military project in 1943 to render naval ships invisible. Elbeck claimed that after the experiment, he time-traveled into the future. He said he visited the years 2137 and 2749, staying 6 weeks in the former and 2 years in the latter, before returning to the 20th century. Why 2 separate times? He explained that in 2749, humanity no longer needed time machines. He was an exception. According to him, Earth in 2137 had a completely different geography. Sea levels had risen drastically. The U.S. East and West coasts, Japan, and most of Europe were underwater. The global population had dropped significantly. People used advanced holographic medical technology. No surgeries required. Wars were no longer traditional. Instead, they came in the form of frequent earthquakes, extreme climate events, and natural disasters. Then there's Gordon Scallion, a so-called future mapmaker, who had a near-death experience in the 1980s and claimed he could access future knowledge. He drew dozens of maps predicting how continents and oceans would shift. One of his most famous is titled Future World Map, in which he claimed that by the late 2020s, sea levels would rise by 150 feet, about 45 meters, submerging 1/3 of the world's landmass. Some highlights: a Japan would completely sink. A China's eastern coast would vanish, leaving only central and western regions. A Korea would split, northern highlands remain, southern regions submerged. A most of India, Bangladesh, and Myanmar would disappear. Taiwan, Hong Kong, and the Philippines would vanish. He said the cause would be a chain of earthquakes and volcanic eruptions, starting between the Philippines and Japan, almost exactly where Ryushu saw the undersea explosion. You might think, lots of people draw future maps, so what? But here's the thing. He drew this map in 1991, 30 years before Ryushu updated her manga in 2021. And he didn't just draw one map. He drew dozens, showing gradual changes. Some people even overlaid his maps with Ryushu's dream visuals, and were shocked to find they matched almost perfectly. Lastly, we must mention Edgar Cayce, the sleeping prophet of America, born in 1877, one of the 20th century's most famous clairvoyants. He predicted both world wars, the Great Depression, and even the exact date of his wife's death. Cayce also prophesied, the Earth's axis will shift, glaciers will melt, the global climate will undergo dramatic changes, a new continent will rise from the ocean. He said Japan would sink first, California would fracture and become an inland sea, again very similar to the others. Most shockingly, the CIA itself once published a map echoing these ideas. The U.S. East Coast would be entirely flooded, most of California submerged, the Great Lakes transformed into an inland sea, the Mississippi River would split North America in two, or a new coastline would emerge near the Rockies. After this map surfaced, the CIA deleted the related files. One internet user commented, "When civilians make maps, no problem. But when the government draws one, it disappears." So, should we believe in these prophecies? You might ask, do you really think a disaster will happen this July? My answer is, I don't know. But what we can do is observe more carefully with a new lens. Let's ask, has seismic activity noticeably increased recently? Have Japan, Taiwan, or the Philippines issued unusual marine or tectonic warnings? Have NASA, NOAA, or JAXA detected magnetic anomalies under the sea? Have mysterious explosions or undersea events been rapidly censored or covered up? More importantly, all these prophecies share a core message. Humanity is dangerously ignorant of nature's power and reckless in its use of technology. Whether or not the disaster occurs, we must remember, Earth is our only home. It is not a laboratory, and it must never become a battlefield.